A very warm welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into a story that is so much more than just an ancient battle. It's really about a moment of intense crisis and how divine guidance transformed that despair into a timeless blueprint for resilience. Let's get into it. Everything really starts with this single, powerful idea. Just try to imagine hearing these words right after a huge defeat. It's a statement that instantly reframes everything: life, death, fear, and destiny. It really sets the stage for a profound lesson in perspective. To feel the full impact of these words, we have to go back to that moment at the Battle of Uhud. The early Muslims were right on the edge of victory, and then, suddenly, it turned into a crushing defeat. So in the middle of all that grief and confusion, these verses came down, not as some abstract wisdom, but as a direct, divine response to a community that was hurting. So where does this divine guidance even begin? Well, it starts with the deepest human fear we all have, the fear of death. The very first step was a kind of spiritual consolation, designed to help them see their loss through the lens of a much bigger, unshakable divine plan. This brings us to a core concept: the appointed time. See, after the battle, some people were probably thinking, if only we had retreated, we could have saved lives. But this verse corrects that thinking right away. It teaches that no one dies a second sooner or a second later than their decreed time. And this is so powerful because it frees you from the paralysis of fear. It lets you focus on the quality of your actions, not just the length of your life. And their struggle wasn't happening in a vacuum. The verses connect them to this long, noble history, reminding them that countless prophets and their followers before them faced huge trials without ever caving in or losing hope. They weren't just some defeated army. They were part of a legacy of people who stood firm. And that legacy was all about a specific mindset. The verses draw a really sharp contrast here. The wrong focus, chasing worldly things, fearing worldly losses, but the right focus? Well, you see it in their prayer. Our Lord, forgive us, make our foothold firm, and give us victory. It's a total shift from wanting material things to seeking something much, much higher. Okay, so after offering that crucial spiritual comfort, the guidance takes a sharp turn. Now comes the really frank, direct analysis of what actually went wrong. And there's absolutely no sugarcoating here. This is a lesson in radical accountability. The verse lays out the chain of events with incredible precision. First, God's promise was coming true. They were winning. Then, a single clear order was given to the archers on the hill. But in a moment of human weakness, seeing the spoils of war down below, some of them got distracted. And that dispute, that brief loss of focus, was literally all it took to turn a victory into a defeat. It's a stark lesson in how fast things can unravel. What followed was just chaos. People fled in a panic, not even looking back, while the prophet himself was calling out to them. The verse explains that this distress upon distress wasn't for nothing. It was a painful, for sure, but necessary lesson in detachment, to teach them not to grieve so deeply over what they lost, whether it was the victory or the spoils. And in that moment of crisis, two completely different mindsets emerged. The truly faithful, even in all that chaos, were given a sense of peace and security directly from God. But the doubtful? They were just consumed by their own worry, questioning God's whole plan. It just goes to show how the same exact event can create two totally different internal realities, all based on the state of your faith. But here's the thing. Even after this really sharp analysis of their mistakes, look at how the verse ends. It doesn't end with blame, it ends with mercy. And He has already forgiven you. This is so, so crucial. The lesson is delivered, the mistake is pointed out, but the door to forgiveness is immediately swung wide open. It's a message of hope, not permanent failure. So how do you move forward from a setback like that? How do you actually rebuild a community that's been shaken to its core? Well, the next verses lay out the divine model, and it all comes down to leadership. This right here is basically a masterclass in compassionate leadership. The guidance given to the prophet is just profound. It's not simply about forgiving, it's a whole process. First, be gentle with them. Then, pardon them, and even pray for their forgiveness. And this is key. You must still consult them in decisions which restores their dignity. Only after all of that healing do you make a decision and then put your full trust in God. And the verse is super explicit here. It says that if the prophet had been harsh, the people would have just scattered and left him. His leniency is described as a direct mercy from God. So the main point is this. In a moment of crisis and failure, it's not harshness that restores order. It is mercy that holds a community together. This brings us to the final, powerful conclusion of these verses. After understanding destiny, analyzing the mistake, and learning how to heal, the entire idea of victory and loss gets completely redefined. So what is true success, really? Is it winning a battle, gaining stuff? The verses here give a definitive answer. True success is getting the forgiveness and mercy of God, and that reward is explicitly said to be better than whatever they accumulate in this world. At the end of the day, whether you die in battle or in your bed, the destination is the same. Everyone returns to God. This just shifts the entire goalpost of life. And it all comes together in this one final, definitive statement. This is the ultimate takeaway. It doesn't matter who is on your side or who is against you. If God's help is with you, no one can overcome you. And if he abandons you, well, who else is there to help? So the only one to truly rely on is him. So, we're left with this question, right? We've just walked through a 1,400-year-old story about a military defeat, and yet it contains this timeless guide on how to face failure, the need for accountability, the power of merciful leadership, and where to find real strength. How can these lessons on destiny, on focus, on forgiveness serve as a blueprint for our own personal and collective challenges today? That's a powerful thought to end on.